has about 10 minutes or so of recovery time. Can we just stop the...
Coming up, final 50 meters. Cancellara trying to drag it back. Danny Moreno, wearing that King of the Mountains jersey, is going to hang on for the stage win in the 4th day of the Vuelta.
Nice charge there by Cancellara as well. Horner coming across safely ensconced here. No big worries for him. A great finish there by both Cancellara and Moreno.
Moreno gets the stage win. Horner keeps the race lead after 4 days of the Spanish Grand Tour.
And Joaquin Rodriguez there giving the hugs to his teammate, Danny Moreno, the winner of stage number 4.
It didn't look like he wanted to lead it out, but then once he did, Daniel Moreno just blew away the rest of the field. They eventually started to reel him in closer to the line with Fabian Cancellara in 2nd place, but the man in the polka dot jersey had enough left to hang on and win his 2nd ever Vuelta stage as he wins stage 4 here in 2013 after capturing a stage a couple of years ago in 2011 as well.
And Steve, he's a multi-talented rider, 5th overall in this race last year. Earlier this year won the Flesh Wallone Classic. He's got a lot of different talents. This time the timing was perfect and Cancellara couldn't get him.
A surprising lead change, even though Horner and Nibali finished in a big bunch yesterday at the end of stage 4. The Italian is now back out front by 3 seconds on the American as we move in to day number 5. But Horner unfazed by the developments.
Chris, for once I think it is literally true to say that losing the red jersey is the end of the world today.
Quite flat and downhill, so shouldn't be too difficult for us.
I don't know about the end of the world. For me personally, it's not a bad thing to lose a jersey. We're talking a few seconds, and so it's actually better for me now. No, I don't have to do any more interviews after this interview with you until we get to the mountains, and then in the mountains I either climb good and take the jersey back, or I fight for place on the general classification. But in general, for the sponsor, it's a terrible thing to lose a jersey because it's fantastic for them to see a red jersey every day. But for me personally, it's almost better to go without the jersey.
This is the talk of a man who is serious about winning this Vuelta a España.
Yeah, I have good legs. They're really, really good legs. And so if the team takes care of me the way they can, then I'm sure I'll have a fantastic Vuelta.
The ruling for the red jersey caught some people by surprise, including the man who took back the red jersey, Vincenzo Nibali, who didn't even know that he had the race lead once again. He was on his way back to the team hotel. The race organizers had to get a hold of him, call him back to the podium so he could participate in the ceremony as the race leader. Not one really for the general classification riders. We could see a field sprint.
I think we're finally going to see the closest thing to a real field sprint here today. A little bit of a downhill in the final kilometer. No big obstacles in the way. I think this one should come down to a big bunch kick.
Just 2 Category 3 climbs and 2 intermediate sprints in the 174-kilometer stage altogether that heads southeast today from the Galician coast into the Castilla y León region of northern Spain. Another sunny, warm one on the Iberian Peninsula today, and you are looking live at the main field. There is breakaway up the road, and it's gotten the largest gap we've seen so far in the first several days of racing. At one point, it was 10.5 minutes ahead of this main peloton here. And as far as what's at stake, you have the mountain points, of course, first really true sprint stage of the race. And the red jersey could be up for grabs. Time gap still relatively small at the top of the standings, so with time bonuses for winning the stage, we could possibly see it change hands. But on balance, you gotta like Nibali's chances of hanging on to it at this point with likely sprinter stages over the next few days.
Indeed, I think that it would be a pretty big surprise to see Nibali lose the jersey It's not as tricky a finish as it was yesterday with the last 2.5 kilometers going uphill. Not steep, but enough to create a little bit of separation there, which caused that jersey to change shoulders.
Now, some are totally convinced that it's going to come down to a sprint. And that's because even though it's just those 2 Cat 3 climbs out on the profile, the road isn't flat on the run-in to the finish. It's undulating. There are some turns, and it's that unpredictability that the organizers have built into a stage just like today that makes it up in the air, that just leaves that X factor dangling out there. Sometimes in a Grand Tour you have a stage where it's flat and you know it's going to come down to a field sprint. Today it's a likely sprint, but you don't know for sure.
That's right, and there are 3 primary teams that don't want anything to stay away today. That would be Garmin Sharp with the American Tyler Farah, Quick Step with Johnny Mearsman, and of course you don't want to forget Orica Green Edge that has Michael Matthews. Those are probably the 3 marquee sprinters in the race.
Been a 5-man breakaway each of the last several days. This is the signature move here today with 65 kilometers left to go. The one name that popped up on the screen that you might remember is Nicolas Aday, the 25-year-old Frenchman for the Cofidis team. He's been in the breakaway the last 3 days and certainly was the most aggressive rider from the breakaway yesterday. He was in 3 separate moves throughout the stage. Tony Martin, the Omega Pharma Quick Step team, the German back in the field here. But as far as that breakaway, as you might expect, nobody really threatening the general classification. Well down in the overall standing.
And in fact, Nicolas Aday, 20 minutes back, is the highest man in that breakaway group on the general classification.
Now the overall jerseys right now, Danny Moreno wearing green. He's leading the points competition after his win on stage 4 yesterday. Nicholas Roche, winner of stage 2 in the polka dot jersey, leading the King of the Mountains. And of course, Vincenzo Nibali back as the overall race leader for the 2nd time, wearing the red jersey today. As we dip inside of 65 kilometers left to go to the finish. They just went through the first of the 2 intermediate sprint points on the day, and here is Nicolas Aday. Well, he rode so hard yesterday in the first breakaway. Once that came apart, he was on his own. Then other riders came forward from the peloton. He joined them. That disintegrated. He was still out front by himself all the way until late in the stage, but still has the legs to be out there once again on stage 5 here today.
Yeah, he's got to be feeling pretty darn worked over after the big day he had yesterday. But some guys, you'll see them day after day. They just get in that habit and they just keep going.
On the field right now, content to let that breakaway hang out there. Very settled for the day right now. We are underway with our the Vuelta here on Universal Sports. Tips coming up here on Universal Sports at the end of September in the heart tree in Florence. Some gorgeous scenery, and as we see some rain for the first time coming down on the peloton here in stage 5, something to note about the World Championships is a lot of different. That it's a good course for them. Not the true sprinters, but there are a lot of stage racers, there are a lot of climbers, a lot of the marquee names in the sport, both on the women's and the men's side, who really like the course in Florence.
It's typical of a road race at the World Championships to have a circuit that has some climbing and just throws quite a bit of unpredictability at the riders. They want to make it a type of race that allows a lot of different riders a chance to win. They're always very under control.
So our leaders now on the lower slopes of this Category 3 climb, the Alto de Padronello. Not a particularly difficult climb, an average of 2.5%, so it's not going to make a huge selection. It does get steeper towards the top, but most of the sprinters should be able to get over without any problem. Still a long way to go to the finish once they get to the summit. But for the first time, we're starting to see raindrops falling on the peloton here. With Garmin Sharp leading the way for Tyler Farah.
Johan van Sumeren back to the front. He's been up there for a bit later in this race, doing some big turns on the front. 20 minutes down in the general classification, he sits but that's not what he's here for. He's at the Vuelta to ride in the service of Tyler Farah on these sprint days, to bring back those breakaway groups and get his sprinter in a position to win.
An intriguing dynamic, because we've seen Garmin Sharp most of the way riding at the front to control the gap to the breakaway. When you have a stage that you feel is going to come down to a field sprint, and you have a few different sprinters who have a victory in mind, how do you get different sprinters' teams to share the load? How do you determine which team is going to do the riding at the front? Because so far it's been all Garmin Sharp.
There are two things that come into play: bluffing and showing your hand, and making, talking with other teams. And so sometimes it's just the first team that goes to the front and says, we want it. Then the other teams sit back and say, okay, they've shown the interest and we're going to let them work all the way to the end. A lot of times what will happen is, before you put your team on the front like Garmin Sharp has done, you'll get with the other sprinters teams and you'll say, hey guys, Mega Pharma Quick Step, you've got Johnny Mearsman. Orica Green Edge, you've got Michael Matthews. Why don't we each throw two guys in up here and bring this break back together?
So far it's been largely Garmin Sharp. Orica does have some men up there who've been lending a hand.
Yeah, but we have not seen a lot of the Omega Pharma Quick Step on the front today. And they've done some work in the other days, but so far have come up a little bit short.
Now this main field not yet on the climb. Our 5 leaders have started the Category 3 climb, but not this group.
Yeah, that's what's always so interesting about these races, when you look at the riders climbing and they're not yet on, quote, the climb that the race is calling the climb. And there's just a lot of this stuff out there. It's
working for Tyler Farah of the Garmin Sharp team, hoping to get his 4th ever stage win at the Vuelta. He's won stages in all 3 Grand Tours, 2 at the Giro, 1 at the Tour de France. But it's been a tough couple of years for him. And it seems like this year he's just missed out at some of the big races. 2nd, 3rd, he's been in good position, but just hasn't been the fastest guy at the line. And a win in a Grand Tour near the end of the year certainly be a boost to his confidence, and probably something he could use.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually spoke with Matt Wilson, one of the directors for Orica Green Edge, as the KOM here looks like Nicholas Day. No problem. And most aggressive rider from yesterday as well. That's why he's got a red number. But Matt Wilson, the director for Orica Green Edge, the team of Michael Matthews, may be the fastest guy in the race, maybe not. We'll find out a little later today. I asked him who he thought the major competitors were if there were a sprint today, and the first guy he said was Tyler Farah. He said Tyler's been looking pretty good the last half of the season, and he thinks he's the man to beat today.
Working our way through the field up towards the front. Casual pace in the peloton. Doesn't it always seem, though, that anytime we have a stage where the profile says, all right, put me in field sprint, but there are some features and things out there on the road that may not let it come down to that. When we have those scenarios, it seems like more often than not, we don't get the field sprint. We do find some kind of a surprise, whether it's this 90-degree corner that comes inside the final kilometer, whether it's those undulating roads towards the finish. It seems as though we always have something that is somewhat of a surprise that keeps it from becoming a field sprint.
Yeah, it very often does happen that way. I totally agree. And there are a couple of decent-sized bumps right in the final 10K of the race today. So in the final 6 miles. So it is certainly possible that the sprint trains will get disrupted, or the sprinters will get flushed back a little bit in the peloton and not be able to make their way back up to the front. But I do think we're going to have a big bunch finish today.
The dynamic at all that we don't have some other top sprinters in this race, like a Mark Cavendish or a Marcel Kittel, guys like that who are right now the fastest riders in the sport and whose teams are so dedicated to them in terms of a lead out. Do you think that has an impact on whether or not a stage like today comes down to a sprint?
I don't think it really does. I mean, look at Van Sumeren on the front in the rain. Look at his face. Yeah, it may be pretty easy sitting in the field, but he's putting in a massive amount of work up on the front. And now we got a man back here with a wheel problem. Looks like he's maybe asking for an entire bike. I don't think it's going to make a big difference on a day like today.
So it is a brand new bike for Dominique Nares of the BMC team.
That's pretty interesting because Nares was the man that was 22nd yesterday, and he was the guy that was 1.01 seconds behind, who was 21st, and that's what caused the gap.
As the field goes over the summit of the Category 3 climb, a little more than 3 minutes behind our 5-rider breakaway. And that's one of the things that is a little unsettling about the way they determined that time in the two groups with Nibali and Horner yesterday. The two groups came across the line by pure luck, by happenstance. You had the guys at the back of the Nibali group who just, by luck, happened to be side by side instead of in a row. If one of those guys would have just trailed off or stopped pedaling 2 pedal strokes earlier, there wouldn't have been that gap, and there wouldn't have been 2 groups. Everybody at that point was coasting to the finish line, and by happenstance, it just happened to be that guys were side by side instead of wheel to wheel, and that is what put Nibali back in the red jersey.
Yeah, and that is, it's amazing that that little difference could make such a big difference for the red jersey, but literally 0.01 seconds, that's not much time. I mean, if one guy had been a foot further back, instead of all being side by side in that first group, they would all have the same time.
Everybody over the top of the climb now. And the gap under 3 minutes with 26 kilometers left to go, but still some rolling roads out there as they head southeast towards the center of Spain here today on Stage 5. Well, keep this in mind. The final 10 kilometers constantly up and down. They'll hit a stretch of 1.5K that averages over 4%. That comes with right around 6 kilometers to go to the finish. Should have a tailwind at that point. And then a 90-degree right-hand corner with 600 meters to go to the line as well. So some features there near the end that could change the course of this stage. Intermediate sprint coming in just about 2 kilometers. General classification riders and teams just sitting back and letting the sprinters do the work at this point. Next big GC battle is expected to come this weekend.
I'd be real curious to see if we get the Argos train lined up at the front at any point here in the next handful of kilometers with Warren Barguil, their Frenchman, who is a pretty fast sprinter, young guy, and he's really in this Vuelta as part of his development. The Argos team bringing a bunch of young guys to this year's Vuelta.
And headed towards Sanabria, the Lago de Sanabria, the big natural lake in this part of Spain. One of the biggest lakes in the country, but not there yet. Still with some business to finish off, and that is bringing back that breakaway. But Orca Green Edge very intent now. Just about all their riders at the front of the peloton to try and bring back these 5 as they hit that intermediate sprint point. And Arnaud Fortier 24-year-old Frenchman first through for the FDJ squad.
Arnaud breaking his collarbone in January in the second day of the Tour Down Under. And that didn't really start his season off on a great foot.
Now, a lot of times when you get injured early in the season, you're playing catch-up the rest of the year because you don't want to miss a lot of training or a lot of races, so you sometimes rush back and you're never fully healthy.
Yeah, it certainly can really make a mess of the first part of your year. Quite often what we do see, Steve, is guys are actually able to recover from a really early season injury like in January, like he did, and come in so fresh mentally and physically late in the season that they can pop off some great results. But some guys just never really get it back on track.
Under a minute now from this field to our breakaway. Do the bulk of the work out on the road throughout the day and bring the break back. Many times miss out on a stage win because of that at the end. You've seen Garmin Sharp out there. You've seen Oregon Green Edge, two teams most prominently doing the heavy lifting to bring back this breakaway, which is down to just 51 seconds up the road now. Will it cost them? Will other teams play off their work, exploit it, and use it to their advantage to get a stage win? As a Cofidis rider is getting some help back here. Adrien Petit, Frenchman, in the cars as he works his way back to the field with 11K left.
Steve, the chase and the lead out are this incredible dance of timing and strength. And if you get up there too soon, you can burn your guys out, and you don't have the freshness for the really high speeds on the run-in. If you get up there too late, well, if some other team takes control of it, they may be going so fast that you cannot physically get your team organized and haul them to the front of the field. And so there's all sorts of problems there. And if you get up there too soon and you don't have the speed, then you get swarmed either way. So it's about timing, and it's not just the same every day. It's different every course. It depends on the other team's goals and everything else.
So the Frenchmen get the top honors in the sprint a moment ago. Standings making it official. All right, coming up on the final 10 kilometers, and again, very up and down terrain to deal with.
Steve, I do believe that Michael Matthews is the man to beat today. Got a couple of wins in the Tour of Utah, and when I spoke with his director, Matt Wilson, both as the stage was just getting rolling this morning, you know, he was pretty confident that the team was going to be good. And I've seen Matthews there riding very poised. He's a very young guy, but he's got great speed, and a former champion of the world as an under-23 rider. Was really good at the slight uphill sprints. But yesterday he just didn't quite get it because two guys had popped off the front, Cancellara and Moreno. He led in the rest of the group.
Now here's Courtier, the Frenchman, really accelerating now. The main field about a kilometer behind these breakaway riders with 10K left to go. And we finally hit that point where one rider in the move said, enough is enough. I don't want to get caught. I'm going out on my own. This is the 24-year-old who has launched a bid here to go clear the others.
Yeah, taking one of those bumps in the road and using it as a springboard, you can see just how tired the rest of that group was, exploding and splintering into groups. Jurgen van der Walle, the 36-year-old veteran, pulled out of Belisol trying to mark him, but so far, not happening.
This young Frenchman missing almost 3 months because of his early season injury. Now trying to come back late in the year in a solo move here, leaving his 4 breakaway companions behind with just inside of 10 kilometers left to go to the finish of stage 5.
That leaves Simon Gerrans on the front now for Orica Green Edge. As you can see, another of his teammates just peeling off after a big effort. And he's still got a ways to go. They don't have that many guys left on that Orica train.
Second rider now on the road is Lotto Bellestol's Jürgen van der Walle from the breakaway. Pretty healthy gap between the two here at the front of the stage. Peloton inside of a minute back. Backup Soleil rider just off the front, about to be picked up. Movistar also coming to the front of those dark blue colors with the green helmets. Just going inside the 9K banner for our leader from FDJ. Remember, the road's still rolling up and down the rest of the way. No categorized climbs, but not much flat either. And sometimes that can be almost worse at the end of a stage like this. They will hit a stretch of 1.5 kilometers of road with right around 6K to go to the finish. That averages over 4%.
Yeah, it's a nice little bump, and then there's another one after that. So it's by no means flat. You're absolutely right, Steve. Makes it very tough on a solo rider because he has to drive down hard on the pedals on these descents where the guys in the peloton that are sitting in are coasting. And then he has to keep on the power on the climb, and that makes it very tough.
Just over 50 seconds behind at the 9K banner. It's not like it's an individual time trial on flat roads where you just bury yourself and try to stay aerodynamic the whole way through. You have to deal with the undulations in the terrain. You have to absorb it and try to power through.
He's doing a fantastic job right now, but it's the uphills that I think are really going to hurt him.
And he's about to get to this stretch here. It's averaging over 4%. And they are flying behind. Orica Green Edge once again controlling the head of the peloton. Backup Soleil and Movistar just in behind. And the riders from the breakaway, no doubt, getting scooped up shortly. This is the only man left at the very front. Jürgen van der Walle in the background there, trying to hang on. But what was once a 5-man breakaway for most of the stage has come apart under the pressure of this attack by Arnaud Portier, the 24-year-old Frenchman for FDJ. The other riders from the move dropping off. And the peloton picking them up on the road. 7K remaining, a 45-second difference.
So Van der Walle being so close behind, and there goes Nicolas Ade being picked up from the breakaway, the man in red for Cofidis. But honestly, with Van der Walle so close behind Courtier, at this point, he's probably a little bit disappointed they weren't together the last handful of kilometers, trading pace.
Yeah, they've been just a few seconds apart, but you're stronger together than you are apart.
Indeed, you get that rest when the other guy's on the front. And he just continues to persist. He's making Van der Walle ride all the way up to his back wheel.
And the field taking more time back. It's almost half a minute now with 6.5K left. Road not doing the breakaway any favors at this point either. So Van der Walle has gotten on to the back of the Frenchman. What can they do together here? And now the situation is that it might be tough for Van der Walle to take some pulls because he had to work so hard to get back onto the wheel of the FDJ rider too.
Yeah, both guys in the wind, so they're both flogging themselves, and then they get together. And Courtier doing his best to keep pulling there for a while, and now Van der Walle comes to the front. So they've done a great job to hang out there, Steve, but watch this peloton as they approach the left-hander or the roundabout here. And now picking up another man from the breakaway.
Piedra. Colorado roll rider in the green goes backwards, and the peloton scooting forwards. It's about 20 seconds behind, so they can just about see them up the road.
Indeed, on the longer stretches, they'll certainly see him, and on the uphills as well when the speed is lower. Also back in the peloton, keep your eyes out for Van der Walle's teammates. Lotto Bellestol because they have Greg Henderson, who's a very good lead-out man for Andre Greipel, but he's a good sprinter in his own right as well. They don't have to do any work right now because they have Bandewale off the front. So Lotto Belisol can just sit back, relax, and ride the train and see if they can take the lead in the final couple of kilometers.
Coming back with 5.5K left. These two losing their advantage. Last two from a 5-man breakaway.
And this is one of those bumps that are so incredibly painful when you've been off the front all day long and you just can't keep the intensity up anymore.
And now Omega Pharma Quick Step with the light blue on the shoulders for the first time, really bringing some riders to the front to ride for Gianni Mearsman.
Yeah, Tony Martin just about to hit the front, and you know, let's look back at some of the things Tony Martin has done for Mark Cavendish over the years, both on this team and the HTC High Road squad. He was a great lead-out man, not in the final kilometer, but up until that point, because he's got such a big engine, he can get on the front and drill it so fast that nobody else can attack.
Final 5K, stage number 5. 2 leaders with a dwindling advantage. The field just seconds behind. Still some up. A 90-degree corner inside the final kilometer. And Omega Pharma Quick Step taking control at the head of the peloton.
It's Tony Martin as he's up there, 70K per hour, between 40 and 45 miles an hour for the chase right now, Steve. And the reason why, when you asked me earlier today, what chances I give the break, and I said, a 1/10 of 1%, is just this. They're still out there with 4K to go. There's a chance, if everything went just right for them, they could win, but it's highly unlikely.
Well, there's a slight uphill between 3K and 1K left, and then slightly downhill from there to the finish. But that 90-degree corner coming with 600 meters to go to the line. And just about to bring them back once and for all. Poitier and Bandewale. They know it's up. So Garvin Sharp, Orica Green Edge, and Omega Pharma Quick Step, the 3 teams doing most of the work today at the front of the peloton. And it's Omega Pharma Quick Step, the team that's at the front when they finally bring back the residue of what was once a 5-man breakaway for most of the stage, and now it's all come back. This is the front of the race with over 3K left.
I think residue is the perfect word because those guys probably feel like residue of their former selves, the way they started the day and all the work they did until they just got caught.
So Gogo, does it stay this way all the way to the finish, or are you looking for some surprises maybe from the field before we get there?
I'm not. I just am not. Tony Martin on the front is going to keep it fast. He's got a couple of teammates behind him there for Gianni Mearsman, so they have strength in numbers. There's a bunch of Orica guys up there as well. See the Cannondale men up there as well. Just one of those in the green. That may be Guillaume Bouvan, the Canadian sprinter on that team. Riqueze for Lombre in the pink would be their sprinter.
All right, this is that uphill that goes for about 2 kilometers. And then once they hit the 1K to go banner in the red kind, it'll go downhill slightly all the way to the finish. And that's why they're spread out along the road here, because they're going uphill. The breakaway has been brought back. And nobody going off the front right now, even though we don't see one team in firm control at this point.
It's faster, I think, than it looks. And there's the attack.
Euskaltel.
Good luck, buddy, but I applaud the effort, and they're giving him a shot at it. No quick reaction.
Well, it's up to the sprinters teams. The other squads, the teams of the GC riders, they're not going to lend a hand. If the sprinters want it to come down to a bunch finish, they're going to have to work together to bring him back. This Euskaltel team disbanding at the end of the year, so looking for some final moments of glory. This is the team of Sammy Sanchez, who lost time earlier in the race, so they're already on the back foot. So Pablo Urtasun in the orange and black going forward. Argo Shimano, the team in the white, finally organizing things with 5 riders at the front with inside of 2K left. They have Nicholas Art, Maren Barguil, 2 riders who could factor in the sprint. Reinhard van Rensburg as well. Urtasun, a small gap, but it's going to be tough to hold in the final kilometer and a half.
Urtasun started off the season really strong, Steve. Way back in April, winning the stage 1 of the Vuelta a Castilla y Leon. Finished 4th overall there after being in the jersey for a day. 2nd in Classica Primavera, also in April, but he is going to come back under the impetus of Argo Shimano. I did notice also Philippe Gilbert. He's on the left side of the screen out of the saddle. Maybe he's going to give it a shot.
Oh, he is. Gilbert is launching an attack with just over 1 kilometer left to go. Desperate to finally get a win in the rainbow jersey of world champion.
He picked up 2 stage wins at last year's
that was not easy.
and they were the first wins of his career, or of the year for him, I should say, before winning the Worlds. And he's back in a very similar place this year.
So inside of 1 kilometer left to go, the road will start to go back downhill, and almost 90 degrees is the corner right there, with about 600 meters to the finish line. And Gilbert has been caught and passed. Argo Shimano now at the front after 4.5 hours. Vaca Soleil is there, Omega Pharma Quick Step, and Orica Green Edge, as well as Team Sky with Edvald Boassenhagen as they set it up for the field sprint. Argo Shimano with 2 guys at the front.
Third wheel is Michael Matthews. Look at him on the right side of the screen.
Matthews now up along the barrier. He's engaged in the sprint. Gianni Mearsman coming up from behind him. It's going to be Matthews. It's going to be Mearsman. Also Ricchese and Lampre there battling, but it is Michael Matthews of Orica Green Edge who gets the win in the field sprint on stage 5.
Well, I have to say, Matthews was very patient. He showed a lot of seasoning there as a pro because his team, Orica Green Edge, was out a lead-out man. He freelanced off of the Argos lead-out, timed his sprint, and had the legs to make it happen.
They finally got the field sprint they wanted, and Michael Matthews got the victory he was looking for. It's the first ever Grand Tour stage win for the 22-year-old Australian on the 5th day of his first ever Grand Tour appearance, as he is the Earbuds Performance of the Day, winning the field sprint.
He comes from 3 wheels back, doesn't have teammates there at the end, jumps into that final left-hand bend, Johnny Mearsman on his wheel, and for a while there, it looked like he was going to be pretty close with Ricchese coming up on one side and Mearsman on the other, but he holds him off pretty handily and gets that first Grand Tour stage win in his first participation.
Ricchese and Mearsman bumping shoulders just behind Matthews, who is still, nonetheless, the performance of the day, brought to you by Earbuds. Never hurt, never fall out, never stop.
And his team did a great job to get him in position there at the end, but unfortunately they didn't have anybody still left to lead him out, so he worked it off the Argos lead out, and it all came out good for him.
Seating is a bit uncomfortable at the moment, so once this climb is over, a small hill, and we'll jump off what an extra pair of shorts on.
Good form. And yeah, everything leading up to this point has just been progression to get me to this level. And the team's been awesome through my progression this year. And yeah, I couldn't have got this win without them. They rode all day. They put all their effort into the final. And yeah, I was just really happy to finish it up for the team.
The lesson is clear. Yesterday, you're third, and sometimes you have success.
Yeah, yesterday didn't quite fold out the way we wanted it to, but yeah, that's racing. And yeah, today we just wanted to try again, and yeah, we had more of a chance today than yesterday. So yeah, we put all our eggs in the basket for today, and yeah, came out with the win.
I suppose you'll dedicate this win to your fellow that fought yesterday.
Yeah, he has a broken collarbone at the moment, so yeah, I wish him a fast recovery, and yeah, this win's for him.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vincenzo Nibali is still the leader by 3 seconds over Chris Horner, 21 over Alejandro Valverde. So there were no gaps and there are no changes in the overall standings. Glad to have you with us as they roll towards the town of Caceres today in western Spain. Nibali, the leader, wearing red for the third time after surrendering it for one day to American Chris Horner, but now safely at the top of the standings. He expects to hold that jersey for at least the next few days, if not longer. He has a 3-second lead over Horner, 21 seconds on the former Vuelta winner Alejandro Valverde. 17 riders altogether are within 1 minute of Nibali's lead. And this is live with our lone leader, only one man in the breakaway today, Tony Martin of the Omega Pharma Quick Step team. His lead 3.5 minutes on this main field as we dip under 50 kilometers left to go on what is a mostly flat stage. There was some elevation earlier in the day, but this may be the easiest stage so far in the first 6 days. No categorized climbs, 2 intermediate sprints that they've already gone through. This is one of those textbook days for the sprinters.
Indeed it is, and when you have only one man off the front, even though it's the 2-time reigning world time trial champion, Tony Martin, it's very easy to control one guy. A team puts a few men on the front, they can bring him back quite easily. I feel a little sorry for Tony Martin out there all by himself, I have to say.
Teams riding at the front of the main field right now with that 3.5 minute margin that's coming down. And what's at stake, you ask, for this stage number 6? Well, 33 points up for grabs in the green jersey competition, which is pretty tight at the top. And it is a stage for the sprinters who don't want to miss out, given the fact that this is more or less a Vuelta that's for the climbers, with a dozen uphill finishes, very mountainous, very difficult. So the sprinters, without a lot of opportunities to begin with, don't want to miss out when you have a golden chance like they have today.
Indeed, most of the sprinters have been scared to come to the Vuelta this year because it's such a brutal climbing race. So for those sprinters that did decide to go to Spain, well, days like today, these are the days they have to capitalize on.
Yesterday was our first field sprint won by Michael Matthews, the Aussie for the Orica Green Edge team. Clearly proved that he was the fastest man in the bunch, and given what we saw transpire, no reason to bet against him today, is there?
Not really, and there are a couple things that can happen if you have a guy who won yesterday like Matthews did, and one of them is that the other teams can say, well, all right, we have proven there's a little bit of a sprint hierarchy, so no other teams go on the front to help chase. But by the same token, it looks like the Argos guys have decided they're going to ride on the front a little bit to chase Tony Martin.
The other side of that argument for Orica Green Edge is they say, well, you know what? The pressure's off us. We've already won a stage, so if you guys want to win a stage, you ride at the front. We're going to sit back.
Yeah, it's kind of the Simon Gerrans approach this morning before the race, as he said, okay, we got our stage win, so now the pressure is off us. But I honestly think that that's kind of a bluffing technique. I think that Orica is the team that probably wants to try and rack up more stage wins with Matthews. I think they feel that they have the speed in the 22-year-old Australian, and so they've got to bluff their way into that so they don't have to do too much work on every one of these days that's a potential sprint finish day, or else they'll run out of guys even earlier than they did yesterday. I mean, he had to freelance that sprint at the end of the day because his guys got burned out.
And it's an interesting psychology because other teams have to read into that bluffing game and decide if they're bluffing or if they are not. And you have to believe that it is a little bit of a mind game because Orica Green Edge doesn't have a real GC rider, so they're betting everything on the sprints. And with only a few sprint stages, why would you just be satisfied for one? Why wouldn't you go for more? So those other teams have to be thinking, okay, Orica's going to be up there. They're going to try to get Matthews another one here today as well.
Yeah, you thought poker was complicated. Try doing bike racing.
A lot of hands, a lot of poker faces to be played out there on the course. So with 40 46 kilometers left to go. The day pretty much settling in for the field that is just over 3 minutes behind a one-man world time trial champion, Tony Martin.
The 2013 Vuelta a España on
Tony Martin, whose lead is under a minute. As we are inside of 30 kilometers left to go to the finish in Caceres here on stage number 6.
There's that sticky bottom we were looking for just a minute ago.
Well, throughout the Vuelta a España, we are inviting you to tweet in your questions or comments for Gogo here. And the most recent one coming from Luke Danielson. What stage of this year's Vuelta do you think a rider will try to take ultimate control of the race in? Who do you think it will be as well that will try to grab the race by the throat? So, Gogo, what's it going to be?
Schlanger, I think that you're going to be going for it in stage 15 because there are 4 Category 1 climbs there, and it finishes on a Cat 1. But I think I'm going to wrestle it back from you on stage 20 on the Angleroo climb.
Is that your way of dodging which actual rider is going to try and do that?
I actually think that it's gonna. You can't really wait. Nobody can have complete control of the race until stage 20. The Angleroo is one where it is so tough, and it's 3 weeks into the race that if a guy cracks, he could lose it. So I think we have to wait for that final mountain day. And Cycling Luke, maybe that's Cycling Luke right there. And I think that's the day that we have to wait for. And I think it's going to be Nibali, honestly.
The only thing I'll say to that is, so often we come into a Grand Tour and we talk about the last mountain stages and how it's all going to come down to that. But what ends up happening is we see earlier in the race who are the stronger riders, who are good in the mountains. And by that point, once you get to the final weekend, the general classification has already taken shape, and we don't see guys losing it. We don't see somebody falling apart and the jersey really changing hands. We see who's good early, and they tend to just maintain that throughout the rest of the race and not have that bad day where they lose the race on the final weekend.
Exactly, and that's why when you said yesterday you wanted people to stump me, there's no real answer to that question, because the way it works out, a rider sees the race unfold day after day, and they find a chance to seize the moment, and that's what ends up making the race. They don't look at the course and say, I'm going to win this race overall on this day. Last year at the Vuelta Stage 17, the Fuente Day, a medium mountain day, there's no way anybody would have thought that Alberto Contador would have seized the moment there, won the stage, and won the Vuelta. It was one of the easier mountain days. But that's the day where he made it happen. And that's why Cycling Luke 2000, he stumped me. There's no way to answer that.
See the difference, just about 14 kilometers left to go, and there they are right behind him. On that team, but riding for Ramon Singleton today.
They kind of have a trifecta of potential sprinters on that squad, a young squad. They're just trying to mix it up and try it with different guys for a number of reasons. A, to give them a shot at a stage win. B, to just work on combinations of that lead out. It's so incredibly difficult to get your timing right, not have other guys bump into the middle of your train and get your guys separated. It's just a massive battle in a field sprint.
Just over 3.5 hours to cover this distance of 175 kilometers down to just about the last 13 now. Coming into the outskirts of Caceres in western Spain here today. Trouble out on the road, no crashes, no technical turns like we've seen earlier this week.
Steve, one guy who's been a little bit quiet in these sprints is Greg Henderson, the Kiwi on Lava Belisol. I was hoping hoping to see him really mixing it up in some of these field sprints, especially yesterday. Maybe we'll see him today. How fast Tony Martin is still going, though, after being off the front for so incredibly long today.
Everybody's got a shot, full pack together here as they come up on the back of Tony Martin. Wide road, so getting towards the front, moving into position shouldn't be all that difficult. No climbs.
But a lot more difficult than it looks, that's for sure.
No climbs to soften the legs today, so on balance, everyone should be feeling pretty decent. Dozen kilometers now coming up here at stage 6. Remember, the final 7K, we'll see the road go up ever so slightly to a 2.5% grade. Final 4K offer up 6 pretty difficult turns, and then at 400 meters to go to the finish, there is a beyond 90-degree left-hand turn around a traffic circle that they will be seeing for the second time at that point. They'll also hit it going the other way with 3.5K to go. And remember, it's also slightly uphill in the last 2.5K before it flattens out near the finish, but that is very subtle.
Granted, he's the guy with the biggest bullseye on his back right now, as is his team, but they haven't done much work. And I think that he's the guy that's going to be propelled by the success from yesterday, and his teammates propelled by that as well.
Estana riding at the front in the red jersey, a few wheels back, overall leader Vincenzo Nibali. Saxo Bank, the team riding behind him in the yellow and dark blue. BMC with a few riders in the red and black over on the left.
I just noticed Greg Henderson on the right, as if on cue for Lotto Belisol, their sprinter for this race.
Tony Martin doesn't look like he wants to give anything up here.
No, he really doesn't. He's just dangling out there.
And riding in the most comfortable position possible at the moment.
Yeah, I usually try and spend at least half of every ride sitting on the top 2.
Absolutely. He is still pumping along at 40 miles per hour as the field hits the 10K to go banner.
He's picked up a handful of seconds.
Well, again, look how much they're spread across the road. You don't see one sprinter's team really coming to the front with all of their riders and setting a heavy tempo right now.
Yeah, it's that battle for position back there where nobody wants to put everybody on the front and commit. But look at Tony Martin's ribs. He's a big guy, but notice his ribs right here. I'll get that arrow out of the way. Next time you see him, you can see with every breath his ribs sticking out. He's a big dude, but he's mighty lean.
And the field starting to expand here. Stretching out a little bit more with just under 9 kilometers left to go. I'll tell you what, the field obviously still in good position to bring him back, but if there's one guy in the field that you don't want to give much leash to by playing any kind of games or waiting for other teams to do the work, it's Tony Martin. Because he could solo away before you know it. And again, we don't see one team up there really coming to the front right now. Lead at 17 seconds. It had come down to under 10. And teams kind of looking around, waiting to see who's going to come to the front. Nobody wants to really lead it out at this point.
Well, Steve, they are giving him just that little bit of rope to get further up the road, but there's just no way he's going to hang off the front. The guys are going to suck him up eventually when the battle really starts. You can see some of his teammates now coming up on the left side of the peloton.
Well, they obviously want to get Gianni Mearsman a sprint win if they can, but again, you don't want to go to the front while you still have your teammate out there, but you also don't want to wait too long and then be out of position or miss out on a chance to sprint.
Everybody's trying to save their energy for when they think they can hold it to the line so fast that no other team will come over the top of them. Yesterday, Garmin did a bunch of work early, then they were kind of blown out. Then Omega Pharma Quickstep came to the front. They did a bunch of work. They lost control. Argo Shimano finished it off. Actually, Orica Green Edge was in there as well. So no one team was able to hold it to the line. It's very tough to get the timing, and there's a lot of back and forth in those lead-out trains.
Movistar riding at the front. 7 kilometers left to go. And the road now starting to go up ever so slightly, 2.5%.
I'd love to see Tony Martin hang on into the final kilometer and really push everybody behind to scramble. But even for a man of Tony Martin's skills, it's going to be so incredibly tough to pull this off after being off the front all day by himself.
Chris Horner. The long day and the lonely day out front for Tony Martin is about to end with 5 kilometers left to go on stage 6. Start to see some more technical corners coming up shortly as well.
What's amazing to me is how solid Tony Martin still looks. He really is not coming back on his own accord. It's just the fight for the field sprint that's bringing him back.
Cannondale with the rider at the very front, followed by Omega Pharma Quickstep, Vaca Soleil, Orica Green Edge among the teams near the front. Martin is back. Let's see what kind of calculus develops there at the front. Who wants to take control? What will the dynamic be?
A bunch of men for Lampre up there as well in that pink jersey for Ricchese. Ricchese second in that sprint. Yesterday has not picked up a win yet this year, but he's been knocking on the door.
It was at 3 seconds, and it looked like they were about to catch him, but it's kind of holding here. The gap, at least for the moment, is not getting any smaller.
It puts a big smile on my face, I have to say, to see Tony holding everybody off, even though it's against all odds that he'll make it to the finish line. He may make it into the very final meters of this race.
Technical turns we talked about. Does that tilt the balance in his favor somewhat?
I think it helps him a little bit. Anytime he's out of their sight, and remember, he can take his perfect line through every single corner. But the guys at the front of the field, they also pretty much get their perfect line unless somebody comes inside of them at the last second and kind of upsets them. But good for Tony for hanging on. 8 seconds, he stretched it back out.
All right, Argo Shimano in the white now, riding at the front of the peloton. Just over 3 kilometers left to go.
He's starting to give me a little bit of hope, I have to say. It's not over till it's over.
Still 3K, a little more spread out here. Is one team going to really take control here? We have a Cofidis rider just going off the front by himself. Argo Argo Shimano, it looked like, was trying to bring more riders to the front of the field. They have 4 riders in the white, but now chasing the Cofidis rider who just went over the top. Tony Martin is inside the final 3K. Again, it's slightly uphill at this point for Tony Martin.
Cofidis has Petit, who's a pretty good sprinter, but they have sprung one guy off the front now. Notice Tony, he's so exhausted at this point. On this little downhill, he coasts, he tucks for just a second, then he gets back on the power. And the Cofidis man almost sucked back up by the Argos train.
Any chance Tony Martin's going to hang on to this?
You know, I just can't imagine it happens. But the way he's riding, I'm starting to wonder.
So the Cofidis rider has been brought back. Now Argos with 4 riders at the front. Ramon Singleton is their targeted sprinter for the day. 2 kilometers left to go for Tony Martin. Single file in the field behind. At one point, they had Martin back to just 3 seconds. They were right on his tail. And now he stretched it back out. At the 2K banner, it's 9 seconds.
Oh my, oh my. You can also see Tyler Farah there in the blue for Garmin Sharp, right behind the lead-out train of the Argo Shimano guys in white.
There's a little disorganization at the front of this field with 1.5 kilometers to go.
Well, one of his guys just got to the front and just sort of moved over into the gutter and pinched some guys off.
They're not riding for Mearsman anymore. They're playing defense and riding for Tony Martin.
Indeed, Tony Martin has a legitimate shot at this, Steve. It's unbelievable.
He may hang on. No one team in control. His Omega Pharma Quick Step team playing defense for him with just over 1 kilometer left.
And indeed, it was Orica Green Edge going to the front for Michael Matthews. They see the clear and present danger, but they may have waited too long.
If there is one man you don't want to fool around with out front, it is the World Time Trial champion, Tony Martin. The only man in the breakaway all day long, and now a chance to hang on to get a solo win.
And total disorganization on the front right now. Rasmussen going to the front for a last dig for Tyler Farah as he knows this is almost over. Tony Martin may ride away with this.
Inside the final kilometer, there is that beyond 90-degree left-hand corner with 400 meters to go. Tony Martin still hanging on. At one point, his lead in the final kilometers was down under 5 seconds, and now here he is with a chance for the most improbable win. The World Time Trial champion, Tony Martin, the only man in the breakaway all day long, is hanging on to this advantage after almost 4 hours. Argo Shimano trying to close it down. Here comes the sprint behind it. But they waited too long. 200 meters to go. Now closing the gap here, but running out of road. Tony Martin desperately trying to hang on here. Radio Shack bringing a rider up. Is Tony Martin going to lose it right at the line? Oh, they come over the top. Saxo Bank gets the win.
It looked like Nicky Sorensen for Saxo Bank. Total chaos. I thought Martin was going to get it. Oh, that must have been a big bummer for the German. 110 miles off the front.
It looked like the special red and white jersey of Nicky Sorensen, who you certainly would not have predicted. It's Michael Morkov. Michael Morkov of Saxo Bank gets the win. Wow. Abhi Cancellara on the left-hand side of the screen really engaged the sprint early.
Well, Cancellara went very long, and that's what made the difference for this sprint, as Morkov was sitting third wheel right behind Cancellara. Cancellara took a massive dig with Tony Martin still dangling off the front. Then Morkov comes up the right side and launches his sprint, which he has perfected on his track racing, which is where he comes from, and they go blowing by Tony Martin. And poor Martin.
He was looking over his shoulder in the final 50 meters and just could not hang on. Instead, Michael Morkov picks up his first ever Grand Tour stage win.
vencedor de esta etapa, Michel Morgot. Michel, congratulations. Can you explain this strange win, this strange final?
Sure, it's also strange for me. I have to be honest and say that I was never participating really in a bunch sprint like this before, and yeah, I tried because I'm the only one for the team who can sprint, and for the end I had a really good position. I got in the wheel for Cancellara and he took a long sprint, and I felt already on 90% on the wheel of him, and I knew that I would have a last kick, and it was just precise enough.
I suppose the most difficult was to decide the moment, the time to make the jump.
Yeah, when I jumped, I was actually a little bit unsecure if I did it too early. It was really exciting to see the finish line, but this was a really fast sprint. I think we had some tailwind, and it was really quick to the finish, and we just passed Tony Martin on the line, so he did a big effort as well.
Your most important win. What do you feel?
Yeah, I feel amazing, and it felt fantastic to raise my arm with this national Danish jersey at the finish line of this stage. I'm unbelievable proud and happy and really lucky.
I repeat, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Stage 7.
And just over 200 kilometers for this 7th day of racing, and like yesterday, not a single categorized climb on the profile.
Yeah, this one really looks like it's made for the sprinters. There is that little bump there, fairly late in the race, but 10 or so kilometers to go. But it does look like a day for the sprinters, and they're going to want it because they're not going to have any opportunities for a bunch more days.
And this is live out on the road from the back of the field that is chasing a 3-man breakaway. They have pulled them to within 3 minutes with just over 63 kilometers now left to go. 3 riders in the breakaway today. Christian Nies, this German ride here for Team Sky, the 32-year-old, along with Marco Pinoti, the veteran for BMC, and Francisco Aramendia, the 26-year-old for Caja Rural. Went away much earlier in the stage, and the gap climbed a bit higher earlier in the day, now slowly and incrementally coming down just inside that 3-minute mark, and a long way to go. So the peloton not really concerned at this point. None of these 3 riders a big long-term threat on the general classification.
Aramendia, man, we've seen featuring in the breaks before. Now, Marco Pinoti here, Steve, a very interesting case. He is considering retirement, and he's just trying to make that decision. He has a very strong likelihood, he said, that this will be his last Grand Tour. He's not sure if he's going to race on a slightly less, well, let's say grand scale next year. But he's an engineer. He's known for his scientific approach to training and looking at his power meter right there. And we don't know if we're going to see him in another Grand Tour.
And this is Aramendia, the 26-year-old from the Caja Rural team. He was the most combative rider of last year's Vuelta a España, always trying to make a breakaway whenever he sees the opportunity. Found it today, and he's one of the 3 that have defined stage number 7 so far. And as far as what's at stake in today's racing, well, last sprint stage until day 12. So obviously that is certainly on the minds of the fastest men in the field. Philippe Gilbert, what's on his mind? Well, seems like he's pretty at ease right now, but probably a little stressed that he still has not won in the rainbow jersey of world champion, and running out of time before the world championships come up late in September.
Well, he certainly didn't look like he was thinking much about bike racing there, did he? And these are those days where a lot of guys, especially with 3 guys off the front with 60K to go and only 3 minutes advantage, it's not too dangerous. So a lot of guys can be relaxed and just catch up with some of their friends in the peloton.
Talking with Dean Martin on the Martin Sharp team. Trying to listen in to see what the conversation was. Not often do you get an opportunity to hear riders talking with one another like that. Couldn't really make it out, but
I couldn't either. It seemed
didn't
like
seem to be a very important conversation, more lighthearted.
Well, they're typically fairly lighthearted until you get down to business late in the race, and then they're not really conversations anymore. Then they're incredibly short.
again, sunny skies, warm temperatures, and maybe one of the hottest days of the race so far because they are heading south into the Andalusia region where it really gets up there in terms of the temperature. And that is Vincenzo Nibali wearing the red jersey. 4th day in this first week. He is worn red. Former Vuelta winner and this year's champion at his home Grand Tour, the Giro d'Italia. So that's where we stand. 3-man breakaway, just over 3 minutes up the road now with just about 60 kilometers left to go on day 7 of the Vuelta. The main field led by Omega Pharma Quick Step. They have our 3 leaders within 2 minutes with just over 40 kilometers left to go on this 7th day of the season's final Grand Tour. The race today, 206 kilometers long. One of only 2 stages at the Vuelta this year in excess of 200K. They have one more intermediate sprint to come. No categorized climbs. A largely flat day. Heading into the Andalusia region around Sevilla in southern Spain today. Warm temperatures, sunny skies. The Vuelta known for its rather short stages, not like the other Grand Tours where you get more that are over 200 kilometers. They tend to keep them short, succinct, and to the point.
Well, the idea there, Steve, is to make the racing a little bit more spirited and to really just sort of cut to the chase and let's get down to business. These guys today will be out for about 122 miles, so it is a long day in the saddle, no doubt about it, and only 1 minute 45 second advantage for the breakaway trio. Not looking so good for them.
They will see the finish line for the first time at that second intermediate sprint, which comes with 31.4 kilometers left to go on the stage, and it's become a pattern in this first week of the Vuelta to make some interesting features stick out on the road. Some technical corners in the final 10K. There are 6 roundabouts within the last 3K today alone. The last one, turning right, is just 700 meters from the line. The road then bends slightly to the left at 300 meters. There's a big right-hand turn just inside of 1K to the line. So there are some turns to deal with inside the final few kilometers as you see how warm the temperature is now. Really getting up there at 37 degrees Celsius. Gogo, I'll let you do the conversion because mentally, if I try to do it on the fly in my head, I know I'd come up with some crazy numbers, so I'll let you take care of that.
You think you'd mess it up, huh?
I probably would. Instead, I'll just point out that we're under 40K to go.
Yeah, well, let's call it 99 degrees, so a nice hot day. And the other thing about the heat is that it gets the guys dehydrated, and tomorrow is a critical day. So today, a day before a big summit finish, everybody needs to be thinking long-term. They need to be thinking about how tough the race will be tomorrow and how they better get their, not only their calories today, but their liquids in.
Well, it's an interesting day because with the big mountain day tomorrow, you know the general classification riders are going to sit back and save themselves for the weekend. So you know you have to place a field sprint type of stage ahead of the mountains this weekend. Yet, what the organizers have done is not make it so straightforward, so textbook, that it becomes boring and predictable. They throw in those corners, little undulation, some roundabouts, just to keep it open-ended and create enough variables that it still makes it interesting going into the finale on a day when you know it has to be a sprinter stage.
Indeed, and Steve, these race promoters that put these events together, they're thinking about a lot of different factors. They want to go to a certain town. They want to start in a certain town. They want to lead to an area where they can be close to the mountains and so on. And so they have to put that all into the hopper and figure out how to design the courses. And literally, they have people who go out the whole year, like right after this race is over, they start thinking about next year's race. And they go out and people who are really familiar with the countryside, and they start scouting for areas and roads that they can use in the next year's race. They ask towns for proposals to be part of the race, and they spend the entire next year preparing for the race as soon as this one is over.
Ah, yes. Piedra, who was, I believe, in the break for Kaharual yesterday. He is from the finishing town today, has a lot of family and friends coming out, and they are coming into that finishing town now. You see the 8K banner just behind the riders? That is to where the finish line is set up. Again, they're going to go through it twice today. So the first time is just about 7 kilometers or so from where they are at this point. And that's going to be an intermediate sprint. They'll loop around the town and then come back around to finish the stage. So we'll see them hitting that intermediate sprint as we continue with our live coverage on the 7th day of the Vuelta here on Universal Sports. Live coverage of stage 7 of the Vuelta a España, brought to you by Your Buds. Almost 35 kilometers left to go. Gap hovering at just under 2 minutes now to our 3 breakaway riders. Again, Francisco Aramendia, Christian Nies, and Marco Pinoti, the day's defining break. Being chased by this peloton, Lampre in the pink and blue at the front. Garmin Sharp, Omega Pharma Quickstep, Argos, Movistar among the teams up there now, and just about 4 kilometers away from the second intermediate sprint, which is at the finish line of today's stage. So they're going to get a nice peek at what the run-in is going to look like when they come around the town and do it for real in just a little while. And it's a good thing we're going to have that dress rehearsal because, as I mentioned just a short while ago, a lot of turns and roundabouts to deal with in the final few kilometers. Even inside the final K itself, there's some turns that the riders will take note of because positioning later on in the sprint could be key to getting the win.
And have a look at this one right here, all the way around. It's a pretty big traffic roundabout, so it's not that big a deal. You can see most of the guys still pedaling through it. If it were a little bit smaller, that would be really tricky, but look at how small the roads are at this point.
Narrow and twisting.
Steve, you mentioned just a moment ago Antonio Piedra, the local man from the town. He described today's finale as full of traps.
So these 3 riders will be first through that sprint point at the line. As the peloton rolls in behind them.
And Steve, those real narrow parts that they hit occasionally, those are the places where the peloton is going to be absolutely screaming before at such high speed, because all the riders know that if they're not in good positions where the road is narrow, there's no way at all to move up.
And again, earlier we saw Lee Howard of the Orca Green Edge team with the paper that had the profile and the map for today's stage out on his handlebars, looking at it, getting a sense of what was to come. So now they're going to get an actual look at what it will appear to be when they finish the stage. So it's an interesting time because the riders get to see it firsthand, then they can discuss it among themselves, have a conversation with the team director, and talk tactics out on the road once they make the big loop.
Indeed, and you can see like this right-hander here, and then where the front of the peloton is, that little tiny road. So they got to put that all into their memory, and they're going to have to make sure that they strategize accordingly for the final time they see it.
Just about 2 kilometers away for these 3 riders.
The Pinoti is a very interesting case study in a time trialist because he's not a big guy. He's on the front of this group right now, and yet he's a 6-time national time trial champion of Italy. And in fact, last year he looked like he was really on the way to a medal at the Worlds when he crashed out in the time trial. The thing about Pinoti is he's a perfectionist. He has a very slippery position. He's super aero. He gets very low and very narrow.
Now look how it's stretched out single file here, and this isn't even the end of the stage. Looks like the field now going under the 2K banner to where the finish line is positioned, but another roundabout just ahead of that. And 3 leaders. Christian Nees pacing the way for Team Sky. Pinoni for BMC behind him, and then Armandia. Now the peloton really moving, but they should feel pretty good about the margin to these 3 riders right now, as we're down to the final half K to the intermediate sprint for the breakaway.
I don't expect any of the guys in the break really too concerned. Maybe the Spaniard in the middle, Armandia, just to showboat a little in front of his home crowd because he's a Spanish rider. These guys really just trying to work very well together to stay away from the peloton more than anything.
Will be the finish line in just over 30 kilometers from now, and seeing it for the first time as we just did, those final 500 meters didn't look too bad.
No, they really didn't, Steve, and it's also slightly uphill as well.
All right, so the 1K banner was right there. We saw the red kite as the field went through. Our 3 leaders have gone through the finish line. They're out on the loop now around town.
Say this brings back memories of feelings I had being in breakaways late in the race. You go through a big city like this with large crowds and everybody cheering for you, and it can just give you chills up and down your body because there's so much energy in that crowd, and their cheering is almost like transferring some of that energy to you to try and succeed.
So it's that turn, that right-hander with about 700 meters to go, that looks like it's going to be the only difficult thing in the final kilometer in terms of messing up a potential sprint, as Katusha will lead the field across the line now.
Yeah, just that slight little bend there in sight of the finish line, but pretty wide, pretty good for a big bunch finish. Pretty straightforward. It should be down to the fast men, but hey, it was pretty straightforward yesterday too, and it was a very unusual finish after all.
Well, they only have 6 seconds at the 5K banner, so that's plenty of time for this field to bring them back.
Yeah, a lot of different teams now coming into the mix. Orica Green Edge could not do it on their own. So now it's Movistar up there.
Valverde was second wheel. This is that roundabout we saw before where they went all the way around. So several roundabouts and some technical corners, but the final kilometer, not as bad as the initial profile indicated. They have a turn 700 meters to go, but it looks like the sprint should be pretty straightforward if it comes down to that. Gilbert and Stibar still hanging on out front with 4K left.
Steve, the course may be pretty straightforward, but I just wonder how straightforward the eventual sprint will be if they catch the 2 leaders, because you look at the front of the field, 2 Movistar, 1 Lamprey, 1 Euskaltel. There is no team up there with strength in numbers. It is completely mixed up right now.
And if that's the case and it continues this way, it's going to come down to positioning and just all-out speed.
Indeed, and now I'm seeing 3 Skymen up there for Edvald Boassenhagen in the black with a blue vertical stripe. He's the guy who's been trying for it as well.
It may be a freelance opportunity that a rider takes to springboard to a win. But first, they have to catch these 2 riders who are still leading with 3K left.
And this is that section coming off of those bricks and cobbles there that the peloton is really sketchy. And look at Philippe. Boy, he does have some good form. There's no doubt about it. He is absolutely smoking. Now 3K to go.
All around these tight corners and the narrow roads, hard to tell exactly what their advantage is over the peloton. Well, now it's 12 seconds, so they doubled their advantage from the last benchmark on the road. Under 3 kilometers left. They're making it interesting here.
Movistar still on the front right now with 2 guys, and that's not going to bring back the breakaway. There's no way that if we see it like this much longer, those Movistar guys can't do it. They need a team with several guys or a few teams to come to the front right now. This is touch and go.
Not many other teams for the pure sprinters can do it. This is Dan Martin, who crashed. Number 111 has teammates with him trying to get back up into the field here.
That's not looking good for him.
The top sprinters teams just don't have that collective strength right now to come to the front. Orica Green Edge, one of the only teams that can do it. They were riding at the front a short while ago, but now they've dropped off.
Indeed, this is looking actually pretty good right now for the breakaway duo of Gilbert on the front, Stybar behind him, a Belgian and a Czech rider there.
They're adding to their lead here. 16 seconds. They may take it.
I think they have a very good shot at this point, Steve. They are really flying right now. And you know what? Gilbert has to be careful. He's a good finisher, but he cannot underestimate the newfound speed of Zdeněk Stybar. Stybar was not used to sprinting on the road, and he found something he didn't know he had at Eneco Tour.
And Gilbert has been doing more work than Stybar. He's been at the front of that duo more than he's been sitting on. And he was the man who made the initial acceleration that Stybar followed. Here they are with 1.5 kilometers left to go.
Oh, it is definitely going to be down to the wire.
Just like yesterday.
Oh, my goodness.
And again, it's an Omega Pharma Quick-Step rider. Yesterday it was Tony Martin. Today, Stybar. He's got company in Gilbert. They're trying to steal it from the sprinters here. And coming up on the final kilometer. And no organized chase by one sprinter's team behind.
Well, that plays beautifully into the hands of the breakaway duo. It
One
still
more
doesn't
short
mean
thing
they
to
got
go.
it made, but it definitely helps them stay away.
There's the red kite. Just over half a mile to the finish. I think they got it.
Yeah, at this point, I would agree with you. They have it. It's Orica on the front, FDJ there in the second spot. And then Argos, so...
Who are you thinking, Gongo? Stybar, Gilbert?
I would really like to see the lead duo and see if Stybar is sitting on at this point or if he is still swapping poles. If he's not swapping poles, he could take Philippe.
All right, there's an FDJ rider in the blue who's launched a move from the field now. The cat and mouse. And they can't play games for much longer here because now the train is in full effect at 0.5 kilometer to go. FDJ, Argos chasing. Gilbert and Stybar trying to hang on here.
Well, Stybar is in the perfect position, not having to do any work, but are they going to get caught?
They can't wait. They got to go. Now Stybar accelerates past Philippe Gilbert. Gilbert's second wheel at 150 meters left to go. Stybar trying to pull away. Here comes the pack behind him. Watches Gilbert come up alongside and at the finish line. Stybar raising his arms in celebration. What a sprint at the end of stage 7.
Oh, Stybar denying the reigning world champion. I tell you what, the Czech rider is really showing something special this year, Steve.
Yesterday, Omega Pharma Quick-Step's Tony Martin was just caught at the line. Today, his teammate Stybar just survives at the finish to get the win. The 27-year-old from the Czech Republic, Zdeněk Stybar, coming off his overall win at the Eneco Tour just prior to the Vuelta, now gets
final climb deserves
a
to stand up.
stage win here on the 7th day of the Spanish Grand Tour. Coming around, Philippe Gilbert at the very end. Once again denying the reigning world champion an elusive win in the rainbow jersey. And he is our performance of the day, presented by Earbuds. It was close, because they were coming.
He was very much in that position where he had to jump. He sat on Gilbert, waited as the charge came. He kept looking back, and then right at the last moment, he said, okay, I gotta go now. And they were so close to the finish line, Gilbert could not recover. close the gap and get around him.
Gilbert almost did come around him, though. Right here. Boy, it was close.
Stage 8.
And it's funny how it works like that, but that's when everybody has everything on the line. There's no categorized climbs over the first 95 miles of the race, but the last 9, which brings them up to 104 for the total, is that big climb, 3,150 feet of vertical, and that one is going to create a little bit of separation. It starts out quite hard. The 12.5% is early on, and then it levels off a little bit.
And we are looking down live at the peloton on a sunny and hot day in southern Spain. And as far as what is at stake in this stage number 8, I think the big thing is the unknown climb at the end that should really heat up the general classification. May not decide it, but it's a climb that's never been used before in the Vuelta. A lot of these riders, even many of the Spaniards, don't know the climb, so that always adds that element of mystery and intrigue.
Indeed, I talked with Chris Horner's director yesterday. I asked if he had seen the climb, and he said no, they've seen video of the climb. Same thing for Belkin, for Valkmolema. They hadn't seen the climb either. They had video of the climb that they were reviewing. So that tells me 2 things. 1, they're busy guys and they don't have time to go look at all the courses. And 2, maybe they don't think it's going to be incredibly selective, but that also throws a little bit of an unknown into it as well.
There is a little more than 40 kilometers left to go on the stage, and this peloton is just over 4 minutes behind our largest breakaway of the race so far. 13 riders up the road today. The team in the turquoise, that is Astana, the team of overall race leader Vincenzo Nibali, wearing a red jersey today, staying near the front of the peloton. But so far in this first week, the size of the breakaways have been pretty small. 4 or 5 guys, even a 1-rider breakaway in Tony Martin just a couple of stages ago. There is Joaquin Rodriguez in the red and white of Katusha, team leader of that squad, riding alongside his trusty teammate Daniel Moreno. And actually Moreno in the white jersey could be a better candidate for the stage win than Perito here today. This climb really doesn't suit Rodriguez as much as some of the other climbs later in the race because of its steady gradients near the finish. He likes the short, punchy, explosive climbs that are short and steep just near the top.
Indeed, and we saw Moreno in a different jersey, the white jersey, as the leader of the combination category, which is the guy who has the smallest number of the sum of their position in general classification, mountains, and points. And he's been very consistent, also has won a stage so far in this year's Vuelta.
All right, the gap slowly coming down. Its largest margin was 4.5 minutes at 1 point, but 13 riders up the road, the peloton in pursuit, and still 40 kilometers left to go on stage 8 of the Vuelta. 13 Vuelta a España on Universal Sports is presented by Earbuds. Never hurt, never fall out, never stop. And now, on to an increasingly popular segment here on our Vuelta coverage, Ask Go-Go, or Stump Go-Go as I prefer. We take your tweets, we read them on the air, and Go-Go interacts. And this next week tweet here on stage number 8 coming from Andrew. What's the strategy behind the breakaways? They never make it, and don't they just wear themselves out more? Go-Go? What say you?
They absolutely do wear themselves out, and in a 3-week race like the Vuelta a España, it can actually cause guys not to be able to finish the full 3 weeks of racing because they get so tired from being in breaks. But the reason they do that is because once in a while they are successful. They get their name out there, they get their team out there and their sponsors. And when you look at all these riders from up above here, Lambre, BMC, Vacan Soleil, Omega Pharma, whatever the team is, they're putting a lot of money into these teams. Over $10 million in most of the team's budgets in this bike race, and they got to pay for it somehow. So one way to do that is to put a guy in the break.
And sometimes a rider may be going through his hometown or have friends and family out on the course, so they want to be out front when the race goes through. There's many different reasons why you may be in the breakaway outside of just trying to win a stage.
Yeah. And on top of that, let's take a couple of days ago when Tony Martin did
going fast.
almost 110 mile individual time trial effort. that meant that his teammates didn't have to chase all day. And in very many situations, if your team doesn't have to chase, then if you do get caught from that break later on, one of your teammates can win the race because they're fresh and they've been able to ride the wheels of the other guys who are chasing.
It's been very exciting almost every single day, especially at the end of the stages in our first week, with Tony Martin getting caught right at the line, with Philippe Gilbert and Zdenek Štibar yesterday battling it out right before the field was about to catch them at the end of yesterday's stage 7. One true sprint stage won by the Aussie Michael Matthews, an up-and-coming sprinter. So we've seen a lot of action, a lot of drama, and a lot of excitement in the first week. And hey, as we get into week number 2 today, this is where the real racing is about to begin. So the best is yet to come.
Indeed, a lot of guys are going to start to get sorted out over these next 4 days of racing that we have up until the time trial on stage 11. We're going to see a lot of changes, and we're going to start to see who is really at this race with the legs to get it done.
And let's consider the possibilities of the next 3 days in particular. Mikhail Shirel, number 15 of AG2R, sitting back in the field here. 3 straight summit finishes today, tomorrow, and on Monday. 3 increasingly difficult mountain stages from today through tomorrow into Monday. They get harder every single day by just a little bit every day. So if you're a general classification rider, you've been biding your time so far, how do you approach these next 3 days? What are you looking to do tactically?
I think today you're looking to follow a little bit and not lose time, but not necessarily gain a bunch of time. And let's just note here that Matthew Boucher picked up that intermediate sprint there along the way from the breakaway group, but I'm sure they weren't really sprinting for it. The guys are really just trying to stay away from the peloton, most likely. But so today, to answer your question, Steve, you want to mark the other guys that are dangerous. If you're in trouble, you try and let a guy go who's maybe just a little bit less of a favorite at the end, and then maybe we get another unusual person to snatch a stage victory. And as we get closer to Monday, so the next 2 stages, you can start thinking about being more aggressive. But if you're super aggressive on today's climb, you might be vulnerable tomorrow or the next day.
So we're down to the final 35.5 kilometers of stage 8, and this big breakaway, watching their time slip away ever so slightly, 3:22 up the road. And Horner now just 3 seconds off the general classification lead of Vincenzo Nibali, sitting in 2nd place as we come into another summit finish on stage number 8. And with time bonuses, it's certainly a possibility that he could take back that red jersey, and he says he's going to try. He wants to go for it today, get that red jersey back, especially because of the way he lost it, with the gap that occurred on stage number 4 at the finish. And that's the reason that Nibali is wearing red today and not Horner.
Yeah, Steve, it was really a shame, and I actually spoke with Jose Acevedo, his director, yesterday. Just checked in with him, asked him how Chris was doing, and he said Chris is really good right now. His condition is good, he's recovering well, and he's looking to go for it today. And Acevedo was pretty disappointed the way there was that split in the peloton in that finishing day on stage 4, the day after Chris picked up the jersey. So he ended up losing it on a finish where nobody really expected that. Even Vincenzo Nibali had left the stage because he didn't know he was back in the jersey.
They were all coasting across the finish line. Everybody thought that they got the same time, but it was determined there was a small gap between Nibali's group and Horner's group, just enough for Nibali to take back the red jersey. So Horner in 2nd place instead of 1st as we come to the summit finish on stage number 8.
And Steve, you know, like I was talking about Leopold Koenig earlier and how it looks like we got a crash here maybe on the back of the peloton. If not a crash, certainly a major bottleneck.
Enough to slow the guys down here at the very tail end of the race. And it's Reinhard van Rensburg of Argo Shimano who's in the white there. And down here in the green, this is Michael Matthews, the leader of the points competition and the sprinter for Ulrich Greenedge, who was also caught back there.
Yeah, Christian Kanies, the man for Sky, who was in the break yesterday, and it is going fast. So let's see if we actually, oh yeah, we did have a couple guys, it looks like they They just got stuck there with that guardrail. I'm telling you, man.
It's a little fender bender.
It is not easy to get through these towns with all the traffic control devices when you're in a peloton of 175 guys. You just get pushed out and squeezed, and guys make mistakes, and they're just riding so close together.
What you were going to say about Horner?
Well, what I was going to say about Horner is it's a very similar story to what I was saying about Leopold Koenig, who has his NetApp team on the front, and he's hoping, I think, he's hoping that he can fly under the radar a little bit of the true favorites and try and pick up a stage win. And Horner, at the start of the race today, said the same thing. He goes, you know what? Nibali is going to be watching Rodriguez and Valverde more than they're going to be watching Horner, and he's hoping he can capitalize. Even though he's already won a stage and been the race leader, he's not looked at as one of the three biggest favorites. He's just at half a step below them for the general classification, and he's hoping that he can capitalize on that fact.
Now the riders coming into the town of Estepona, where the second located at 19 kilometers from the finish. As you might have guessed, a very popular resort and holiday town. Over 20 kilometers of beaches, harbors, and coastline here in southern Spain. And ironically enough, this city was actually chosen by the Walt Disney Organization in the early 1990s as the original site for the Euro Disney project before it later went to Paris, where it's now become a fixture. So they were originally going to put Euro Disney here instead of Paris.
No kidding.
I would not kid you, Gogo. You would? Especially not about Disney World.
You wouldn't? Well, you know, maybe they should have put it here because it seems like it's struggled a little bit in Paris, hasn't it? Do you know about their financial situation?
Well, the breakaway here, not contesting the field sprint, but I would have loved to see Space Mountain off to the right as the riders roll through here in the Vuelta.
Exactly. Right there, sort of hovering over the water.
So, getting down to the final 20K of racing, that means just about half a dozen kilometers from the start of that last climb. The Peñas Blancas, first time it's ever featured in the Vuelta a España, a climb of 14.5 kilometers, averaging 6.5%, but hits a maximum of 12.5% in the first 2K before it steadies out the rest of the way between about 6 and 8%.
Yeah, Steve, look at the peloton. It is totally strung out. Cannondale came to the front with a lot of men. They still have 2 men on the front, but everybody now scrambling for position because they know this thing's going to come blowing apart at the bottom of the climb.
Our leaders. Starting the climb with a 1-minute advantage.
And you can see just how narrow it was back there. That also makes things sketchy in the peloton. As you can see, the Garmin Sharp rider there getting rid of any extra weight. Alex Howes, the American, got rid of some food and things he wasn't going to be able to eat at this point in the race, but picking up a bottle there to cool off with.
Now Radio Shack coming to the front of the main field, riding for Chris Horner.
Very interesting to see, and look at all the men they have on the front for Radio Shack. At least 4 of them up there.
Katusha also
that will do me for
working at the front of the field for Joaquin Rodriguez, their overall leader.
Look at the gap just plummeting now as riders take these really hard pulls on the front of the peloton, and then they just swing off and get dropped.
Looks like Horner is second wheel there. He is indeed. And then Joaquin Rodriguez a few wheels back for Katusha. This is up to the very front of the stage. Azanza for the Euskaltel squad. This is the steepest part of the climb where it gets over 12%. The 13-rider breakaway now seeing cracks form in the foundation. And 4 riders for Radio Shack now at the front. Chris Horner, second wheel again. Right behind Fabian Cancellara, who is leading the way.
Boy, Cancellara has some great form right now, I have to say. He is going to be tough to beat at the Worlds.
Vincenzo Nibali also there near the front in the red jersey as the overall race leader for Astana. Today he can kind of sit back, mark wheels, and ride more conservatively. He doesn't need to take time. He can just play it easy here and follow the riders that are his main rivals.
Indeed, it puts him in a very enviable position. Now, let's remember that Chris Horner has a teammate up the road in Matthew Boucher in this breakaway group. So if this group had a little bit more of an advantage coming into the climb, that could potentially really be a big benefit for Chris. But with them being so close, it may not actually help. But you know, if Chris can get across and get the help of Boucher, it could propel him up the road.
Other riders starting to lose some contact with the main field as it gets stretched out on the lower slopes of this climb. Horner with teammates at the front, 3 seconds behind Nibali on the general classification. Coming up to the steep point now, where he gets up close to 12.